My girlfriend of 5 years said, "I'm not attracted to you anymore. I need an alpha." I replied, "I understand." Then I accepted the promotion she wanted her new alpha boyfriend to get at our company. When she saw me in the corner office, her face went pale as she realized I was now her new boss. My girlfriend of 5 years, Tina, ended our relationship last Tuesday. We lived together, so she had the decency to do it face to face, but that's the only decency she showed. She sat me down on the sofa in the living room of the house I own and gave me a speech that she had clearly been rehearsing. She told me she loved me as a person, but she wasn't in love with me anymore. She said that she had been feeling for a while that something was missing, and then she delivered the killer line. "I'm just not attracted to you anymore, David," she said, looking at me with a sort of clinical pity. "I've realized I need a real alpha, someone who takes charge, a true leader." The insult was so direct, so condescending, that I didn't even feel anger at first. It was just clarifying. I've always been a quiet person. I'm not the loudest guy in the room. I don't brag. I don't feel the need to dominate conversations. I lead by example, through competence. I solve problems. I build things that work. I had always thought she understood and valued that about me. Clearly, I was wrong. She saw my quiet confidence as weakness. I didn't argue with her. I didn't get defensive. I just looked at her and waited for the other shoe to drop, because I knew there was more. She took my silence as an invitation to continue. She confessed that she had been getting close to someone else, a guy from our company, Chad. For context, Tina, Chad, and I all work at the same large engineering firm. I'm a senior systems architect. I design the back-end frameworks for our most complex projects. Tina is a project manager, so we work in adjacent spheres. And Chad is a senior sales strategist. He's exactly the kind of guy you'd picture when you hear the word alpha used unironically. He's loud, overtly confident, wears flashy suits, and is great at giving slick presentations. He's all charisma. The substance, however, has always seemed questionable to me. Tina went on and on about Chad's ambition and his unstoppable drive. And then she revealed the real core of it. For the last 2 months, a new, major position had been open at the company, Director of Strategic Integration. It's a huge step up, a leadership role designed to bridge the gap between the technical teams, project management, and sales strategy. The new director would essentially be the boss of all 3 of our departments. Tina told me, with a smug sense of excitement, that Chad was the leading candidate. She admitted she'd been helping him craft his proposals, feeding him inside information from the project management side to make his pitch look stronger. She was completely invested in his success. She saw him getting this job as their launchpad. They were going to be the new power couple of the office. As she was telling me all this, I just sat there, and when she was finally done, after she had thoroughly laid out why I was no longer adequate for her, I looked at her and said, in a perfectly level voice, "I understand." She seemed a little surprised by my lack of emotion, but she took it as acceptance. She said she would need a week or 2 to find a new place. I just nodded. Here's what she did not know. While she and Chad were plotting his rise, senior management had been having serious doubts about him. They saw what I saw. A lot of flash, but not a lot of depth. His strategies looked good on a PowerPoint slide, but they often ignored critical technical limitations, which my team would then have to scramble to fix. Because of this, about a month ago, the senior vice president, a man named Marcus, had quietly approached me. He told me that while I wasn't the obvious choice from a sales perspective, I was the only candidate who truly understood how all the pieces of the company actually fit together. He said the company needed a leader who could deliver results, not just promises. He offered me the director position. I was hesitant. I enjoy the hands-on work. I'm an architect, a builder. I was not sure I wanted to get into senior management and politics. I told Marcus I needed some time to consider it. I didn't mention it to Tina because our relationship was already feeling strained, and I didn't want to add a complex work dynamic to the mix. My hesitation, my desire to think things through logically, was the very thing she saw as a lack of ambition. But after her speech, after she called me weak and paraded her new alpha in front of me, all my hesitation vanished. Turning down the promotion now would validate her entire twisted narrative. Accepting it was the only move I had left. It was no longer about career progression. It was about self-respect. The next morning, I walked into Marcus's office. He looked up, surprised to see me. "David," he said, "what's on your mind?" "Marcus," I replied, "I've considered your offer. If it's still on the table, I accept." A huge smile of relief spread across his face. "That's the best news I've heard all month," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "We were hoping you'd come around. The official announcement will go out in a company-wide email on Monday morning. Welcome aboard, Director." I spent the rest of the day in a state of calm focus. When I got home, Tina was there, already packing some of her things. She was humming. She told me she was going to have a celebratory dinner with Chad on Monday night after the big announcement. She even had the audacity to pat my shoulder and say, "Don't worry, David. I've already spoken to Chad. Once he's director, he's going to make sure you're assigned to some of the most important new projects. He really values your technical skills." I just looked at her and nodded. "That's thoughtful of you," I said. "This weekend is quiet. I've moved her things from the master bedroom into the guest room. She thinks it's just me needing space." She is blissfully unaware of the email that is scheduled to hit the entire company's inbox at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. She thinks she's hitching her wagon to a rising star. She has no idea she's about to be introduced to her new boss. Update 1. Monday morning arrived with a strange sense of inevitability. The atmosphere in the house was thick with a tense, awkward silence. Tina, however, seemed to be floating on a cloud of smug satisfaction. She was more talkative than she had been in months, going on about the celebratory dinner she and Chad had planned for that evening. As we were getting ready for work, she stood in the doorway of the bathroom while I was shaving and gave me a piece of unsolicited advice. "You know, David," she started, her tone dripping with fake concern. "You're a great architect, probably the best in the company, but you just don't have that leadership spark. You should really learn from Chad. Watch how he commands a room. It might help you in the long run." I just rinsed my razor, wiped my face, and looked at her in the mirror. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. We drove to the office in separate cars, a routine we had started a few weeks ago as the distance between us grew. I got to my desk at 8:30, cleared out a few old files, and prepared for the day. Tina was at her workstation, chatting excitedly on the phone, no doubt with Chad. At exactly 9 a.m., a new email notification popped up on my screen. It did on everyone's. The subject line was simple: Announcement, New Director of Strategic Integration. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Instead, I watched Tina. I saw her click open the email, her face alight with triumphant expectation. I saw her eyes scan the first line, and then I watched as every ounce of color drained from her face. She went from tanned and glowing to a pale, sickly white in about 3 seconds. Her mouth fell slightly open. She blinked and reread the email. Then she reread it again. From across the office, I could see her hands start to tremble. She slowly lifted her head and her eyes scanned the room until they locked onto mine. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I just held her gaze with a perfectly neutral expression. The sight of me, calm and already back to work, seemed to be what broke her trance. She shot up from her chair and marched towards my desk. Several heads turned to watch her. She was moving with so much force that she was practically vibrating with rage. She stopped in front of my desk, her fists clenched. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice low and shaking. "This is some kind of joke, right? How did you do this? You stole this from him." Her voice was rising in volume, and she was causing a scene. People were openly staring now. This was the moment. This was where the new dynamic would be forged. I slowly stood up, looking down at her as she was a few inches shorter than me. I kept my voice quiet, forcing her to lean in slightly to hear me, a subtle power move. "Tina," I said calmly, "this is neither the time nor the place for this conversation. My door is always open, but I expect you to conduct yourself professionally. We have a project status meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock. I'll see you in the main conference room then. We can discuss your concerns about the project pipeline at that time." The color returned to her face in a hot, angry flush. She was speechless. She had come over to confront her ex-boyfriend, the man she had just deemed a weakling. She was now being addressed as a subordinate by her new boss. She stood there for a few more seconds, sputtering, before she seemed to realize that everyone was watching her unprofessional outburst. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her desk. Across the building, I could only imagine the meltdown Chad was having. His entire strategy, his entire identity at the company, was built on bravado and the perception of being the next in line. Now, he didn't just lose the promotion, he lost it to me. That evening, the confrontation at the house was exactly what I expected. She was waiting for me when I walked in the door. She accused me of being a manipulative, vindictive snake. She said I had planned this all along to humiliate her. I let her vent until she ran out of steam. When she was finished, I finally spoke. I didn't do this to you, Tina. I did this for myself. You made it very clear what you value in a partner. You said you wanted an alpha, a leader, someone who takes charge. You made your choice based on your perception of strength. It seems you just backed the wrong horse. I walked past her and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. You're right about one thing, though, I continued, my back to her. The dynamic has changed. It is completely inappropriate for you to be living here anymore. This is my house. I need you to find a new place to live. You have 1 week. The fight went out of her then, replaced by a dawning horror. The reality of her situation was crashing down on her all at once. Her alpha boyfriend had failed. She had lost the power couple dream. And now she was losing her home. Her plan had not just failed, it had backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since I was promoted, and the fallout has been both predictable and, in a way, satisfying. The first week was all about establishing my authority, and Tina and Chad did not make it easy. But their attempts to undermine me only ended up cementing my position. My first official act as director was to call a meeting with the heads of all the departments now under my purview. This, of course, included Tina, representing her project management team, and Chad, representing sales strategy. I wanted to review the entire project pipeline to identify risks and opportunities. Chad came into the meeting with his usual swagger, but it was brittle. He was trying to act as if nothing had changed. Tina sat at the far end of the table, silent, refusing to make eye contact with me. The main topic of the meeting was a major new initiative that Chad had been championing for months. It was his baby, the cornerstone of his pitch for the director role. Tina had been its biggest supporter, ensuring her project managers prioritized it. When it was Chad's turn to present, he put on his usual show. He walked us through a slick presentation filled with impressive-sounding buzzwords and optimistic projections. When he finished, he looked around the room, expecting applause. Instead, I spoke. "Thank you, Chad," I said evenly. "The projections are certainly ambitious. However, I've spent the weekend reviewing the core architecture required to support this strategy. Can you please turn to slide 17, where you outline the data integration process?" He fumbled with the remote, a flicker of uncertainty on his face. He brought up the slide. "As I see it," I continued, speaking to the entire room, "your strategy relies on real-time data synchronization between our legacy inventory system and the new cloud-based analytics platform. However, the legacy system's API has a hard query limit of 1,000 requests per hour. Your plan, as outlined here, would require a minimum of 10,000 requests per hour during peak business times. The system as it currently exists cannot support this. It will fail." I wasn't aggressive. I just stated facts. I presented data. I laid out the core flaw in his entire strategy, a flaw that anyone with deep technical knowledge would have seen, but which he, in his sales-focused world, had completely ignored. The room was silent. Chad's face went red. He had no answer. He stammered something about his technical consultants assuring him it would work. "Then your consultants were wrong," I said simply. "We need to shelve this initiative pending a complete architectural review. I want a viable plan on my desk in 2 weeks, not a PowerPoint deck. Tina, please have your team deprioritize all resources allocated to this project and move them to the Phoenix project, effective immediately." Tina just nodded, her face pale. She had to sit there and publicly dismantle the very project she had championed, the one that was supposed to be her and Chad's ticket to the top. In one 10-minute exchange, I had exposed Chad's incompetence and reasserted control over the company's direction, all by simply doing my job. Their next move was to try and rally support. Tina began complaining to her work friends, people she used to have lunch with, about how awkward and uncomfortable I was making things. She heavily implied that I was creating a hostile work environment, using my new position to punish her for our breakup. It backfired spectacularly. The people in our company, especially on the technical side, value competence above all else. They had all seen Chad's flashy presentations and had all been forced to deal with the messy reality of his flawed plans. They respected my work. They saw me kill a bad project and save the company millions in wasted resources. They didn't see a vindictive ex-boyfriend. They saw a competent leader cleaning house. Tina's complaints just made her look unprofessional and petty. Then came the truly dirty trick. Defeated professionally, they decided to try and attack my reputation. One of my old projects, a complex software update I had personally architected, was in its final deployment phase. Late one night last week, someone went into the system and altered a critical line of code. It was a subtle change, one that wouldn't cause an immediate crash, but would create a serious data corruption issue about a week down the line. It was designed to make it look like I had left a ticking time bomb in the system right before my promotion. It was a direct attempt to make me look incompetent to senior management. It was a clumsy, desperate move. The next morning, during a routine check, I immediately noticed the anomaly in the code. It wasn't my work. The logic was sloppy. I didn't panic. I didn't even mention it to anyone at first. Instead, I went directly to our company's cybersecurity logs. Every single change, every single login is tracked and timestamped. It took me less than an hour to find it. The unauthorized change was made at 10:47 p.m. the previous night. It was logged under a set of temporary administrative credentials, and the IP address from which the login occurred was traced directly to a workstation on the 4th floor. Chad's workstation. I now had concrete, undeniable proof of direct corporate sabotage. He wasn't just incompetent, he was a liability. And I had him. Final update: it has been 3 months since my promotion, and the final pieces of this chapter have fallen into place. The story of Chad and Tina at our company is officially over. After discovering the evidence of sabotage, I did not confront Chad or Tina directly. That would have been messy and unprofessional. Instead, I acted like the director they accused me of not being. I compiled my evidence, the cybersecurity logs showing the IP address, the timestamp of the unauthorized change, the original code versus the altered code, and a brief factual summary of the potential damage it would have caused. Then, I scheduled a meeting with my boss, Marcus, and the head of human resources. I laid out the evidence, calmly and objectively. I didn't frame it as a personal issue. I framed it as a serious and deliberate breach of corporate security and professional conduct. I told them, an employee in a senior role actively tried to sabotage a critical company project. This represents a massive risk to our business. The reaction was exactly what you would expect from a major corporation facing a clear insider threat. HR launched a full formal investigation immediately. Given the digital evidence, it was an open and shut case. Chad was called into a meeting with HR and legal. He apparently tried to deny it at first, but when they presented him with the logs tracing the action directly to his workstation at a time when security footage showed him in the building, his story fell apart. He was terminated for cause, effective immediately. He was escorted from the building by security, carrying his belongings in a cardboard box. Being fired for gross misconduct is a black mark on a career, one that is very difficult to recover from. The investigation naturally led to Tina. While there was no direct proof that she participated in the sabotage, her known relationship with Chad, her public outburst on the day of my promotion, and her complaints to colleagues about me creating a hostile environment painted a very clear picture. She was found to be a part of a pattern of unprofessional behavior that was contributing to a toxic work atmosphere. She wasn't fired, but her fate was almost worse. She was given a final written warning and was laterally transferred to a different division, a bureaucratic backwater of the company that handles legacy accounts. Her project manager title remained, but the projects were meaningless. Her career progression at the company was permanently stalled. She was professionally isolated, working a dead-end job, stripped of any influence or prestige. The power couple was finished. Chad was unemployed and disgraced. Tina was sidelined and humiliated. The grapevine, as always, filled in the rest. Chad is reportedly still struggling to find a new position. The story of why he left our company has, of course, made the rounds in our industry. Tina lasted another month in her new role before she quietly resigned. She couldn't handle the daily humiliation of her demotion or the looks from former colleagues who knew the whole story. The last I heard, she had moved out of the city. As for me, I'm thriving. My department is running more efficiently than ever. We've successfully launched 2 major projects, and the team morale is high. The respect I get from my colleagues is earned not through loud talk or empty charisma, but through steady leadership and proven results. My work speaks for itself. Looking back, Tina was right about one thing. She said she needed an alpha, but her idea of what that meant was completely wrong. She was drawn to the loudest, flashiest peacock in the room, mistaking his bravado for strength. She failed to understand that real strength, real leadership, isn't about the noise you make. It's about the foundations you build, the problems you solve, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are competent and in control of your own destiny. She went looking for her alpha, and in the end, she found one. She just never realized it was the man she was leaving behind.